Hey everybody, my name is Colton Haun and I work for the Gallatin Fire Department. I've been here for 8 years and have a wife and 2 girls, Caroline and Nora Kate. We've got 3 dogs, one of which is a puppy, so we stay pretty busy. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about taking advantage of the pressure governor. So this is going to be kind of a intro to pump in the way that we're going to learn how to charge one hand line and then make changeover from tank water to hydrant water. So for some of y'all this was probably a review, and for others this may be, you may pick up something new. So the objectives for this class, these are the things that you'll be able to do after this class, because we're going to have this classroom portion and then we'll go outside and do the hands-on portion. But the first thing you'll be able to do is you'll be able to change from road gear to pump gear. So, and that utilizes the transmission that's on the fire engine itself. The second thing you'll be able to do at the end of this is charge a single line. The next thing will be, after that line is flowing, then we have 750 gallons of water on our fire engine. So that's going to run out eventually. So what we're going to need is a hydrant or a water supply. So we're going to learn how to change over from that 750 gallon tank to a water supply without a pressure change in the nozzle. So without either losing or gaining flow with that hand line. And the pressure governor is going to help us with that. And just a short overview of the pressure governor. What it does is it controls the RPMs. It raises and lowers the RPMs of the pump to give you a certain pump discharge pressure. So changing over or changing from road gear into pump gear, you see what sticks out there is yellow. So anytime that we're going to move any valve or any control that's yellow, someone once told me, like, you have to think a little bit before you do that, because I'm sure you've heard it, but it's pretty easy to mess up going from road gear to pump gear if you don't follow the correct steps, and you got a lot of noise going on. So the very first step is going to be to place the truck's transmission into neutral. So basically just push the in, and then pull the yellow parking brake. So before I pull that yellow parking brake, there's only one other step before that, but I want to think about that. Am I in neutral? Okay, and put it in neutral, then pull the parking brake. Now, before I move my yellow pump shift selector to the middle, which is the neutral, I have to think about that. Have I done the steps before this? Have I put it in neutral? Have I pulled the parking brake? Yes? Okay, I can put it down into neutral. And then I'm going to watch this, I'm going to make sure that the drive shaft is in neutral in that middle position, and then once you hear that engage, that air, you're going to drop it down into the pump position. So number 4 is move yellow pump shift selector to that bottom position. Now, there's 2 lights down there underneath that selector. One is telling you that it's in pump, or that you're now in pump gear, and one's telling you that you're ready to pump. So once you pull that down into that bottom position, you should see the ready to pump or okay to pump light come on. And then after you see that pump engaged light is on, you're going to then put the transmission into drive. Sorry, so it says pump engaged, that's the first light that comes on. Once you have the transmission down into drive, if everything is working right and the air pressure is up to where it's supposed to be, then you should see the okay pump to light come on. And before we exit the cab and go to pull our tank pump and start pumping that first line, we want to make sure that that okay to pump light is turned on. And here's just a picture of it. So you'll see once you drop that down into this neutral position and then bring it down to the bottom, you're going to see that pump engaged light come on. But right now, if we were to skip the next steps and jump out and go over to the pump panel, we're not going to be able to pump that first line. So what we do is we put that transmission in drive and we ensure that both these lights are on. Just make sure this okay pump okay to pump light turns on. And I did forget to mention, if anyone has any questions throughout this, we'll just keep it discussion, so just bring up anything that comes to mind. So the next objective, once we've got it into pump gear, we've ensured our okay to pump light is on, we jump out and we want to charge this line, right? So step number one, we pull that tank to pump valve, and what that does is that gets water from the tank to go down into the pump. And step number two, and this is a method that we've kind of, I don't want to say came up with, but this is a method you can use. It is an option to take advantage of the pressure governor. So step number two, if you're going to do this method, is to increase the master pump discharge pressure to 140. And the reason that we've chosen 140 is because it is the max PDP of all of our pre-connected lines. Our 400 foot of 1 3/4 that comes off the back has a 15/16 tip on it. And when pumped correctly, it has a pump discharge pressure of 140. So unless special circumstances call for us to have to add line, 140 is probably going to be our max. So we start there. So run it up to 140. And then whenever the nozzleman is ready, he'll call for water. And you open up that pre-connect valve until you reach whatever the pump discharge pressure for that specific line is. So say that 80 is our pump discharge pressure that we need for the number 2 cross leg. So when he calls for water, you pull that out until it gets to 80. Now it's important to note that you're not going to be able to get a true pump discharge pressure reading until that nozzleman is flowing. So once he begins to flow, ensure that your pressure is whatever the desired PDP. Say it's 80. Ensure that it's at 80 and lock it in. So yeah, step number 4, set the final PDP, making sure that the line is flowing. Does all that make sense? All right, now that we've got our line flowing, so we've got our rig and pump gear, we've charged that first line, we've got our pressure set. Now our mind is kind of shifting from initial line is charged, check. All right, now what do we need to be thinking about? What do you think might come next?
Water supply.
Water supply. So we've got fire attack going on. Boom, check. All right, now we've got 750 gallons worth of water. It's time to figure out the water supply, just like you said, Shane. So step 1 for changing over to that water supply is going to be connecting the hose from the hydrant to the intake. And so anytime that we open up a hydrant, we want to do it slowly. Anytime that we're working any valves, especially with larger diameter hose, those are large volumes of water. So we want to open up everything slowly. Open it up and close everything slowly. So step 2, open it slow. Step 3, open the intake drain until the air is bled out. So that pressure governor, it basically detects that water coming in, and it can regulate the RPMs. It does a really good job of regulating RPMs based on water coming in. What it can't handle is air. So if air starts coming into the tank, it starts going crazy trying to regulate that pressure. It throws it off. So what we want to do is just make sure that that intake, that water coming from the hydrant, make sure all the air is bled out of that line before we open up the intake valve. So step 3 is opening that drain, making sure the air is all out. Step 4 is open intake valve slowly while watching PDP. So if you have the advantage of having your valve at the pump panel, you can open up that valve slowly and watch your pump discharge pressure, because what's going to happen, your RPMs are elevated to get to that 140. As you're opening up that intake valve, it's going to take less pressure, it's going to take less RPMs to keep that pressure there. So as you're opening it, you're going to hear your RPMs going down, and you're hopefully going to see your pump discharge pressure stay about the same. If you open it super fast, what you might see is an increase in pump discharge pressure, followed up by that pressure governor catching it up to that 140. So we open it slow, make sure it stays about at that 140 mark. And then you've successfully completed changeover. So now you're on hydrant water pumping your line. So just in summary, yellow, anytime that you're gonna go and touch something yellow, you just wanna make sure that like you've completed the steps prior to touching that yellow thing. As simple as that sounds, that's been a tip that's helped me out tremendously. So that helps me to not skip steps, or if I do skip steps, I know that there were steps before that yellow thing. Another tip that's helped me a lot is ensure that that OK pump light is on before leaving the cab. So I think that's probably the #1 reason why in the past I had jumped out and went to pump and it not worked good. And at that point you start to kind of troubleshoot to figure out what step did I miss. The #1 step for me has always been putting, I put it in neutral, pull my parking brake, I'll drop it down all the way, but then the step that I sometimes have skipped is putting it in drive and then ensuring that that OK to pump light is on. So every time before I exit the cab, I'm looking for that OK to pump light. And pump discharge pressure can only be accurately set while the line is flowing. So we're looking for that residual pressure when we're setting PDPs. So we gotta know that if it's 80, that means 80 while that nozzle is flowing. And then keep tank to pump valve open to take advantage of the pressure governor. So the reason that keeping that tank to valve open helps you to use that pressure governor is if there's any variance in that incoming pressure, if the tank to pump valve is open, then your RPMs will be able to compensate for that lack of water. So that's especially important when you have an inconsistent water pressure or inconsistent incoming pressure, which some of these hydrants in town can give you, but also if you're doing a relay pumping situation where you have a rig at the hydrant, if that rig is sending you variances in pressure, then having that tank to pump valve open is critical. So go do it. For this next portion, we'll go outside and hook up to the hydrant and charge a line and work on that changeover and utilizing that pressure governor to help us keep a consistent nozzle pressure. So thank y'all for sitting through this. Is there any questions that you might have?
Is there any other way to know besides the light?
That you're in pump gear. So yeah, good point. You'll see the speedometer go up to, I believe on our rigs it's about 20 miles per hour, and of course you're sitting still. So if you see it at 20 miles per hour and you're sitting still, you know that you're in pump gear. That drive shaft has engaged the pump and it's starting to spin. Good question. So that's another good point of that is when you go to take it out of pump gear, right? If you see that speedometer is at 20, we don't want to take that drive shaft moving at 20 miles per hour and slap it up into the transmission from like the pump transmission into the truck's transmission, because then we're going to hear all kinds of rattling. Good point, Shane. Anything else?
Sounds good. Thanks for the class.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for the time.
Let's go out here and do it then.
All right, let's do it.
For this portion, we're going to charge one line utilizing the pressure governor. Once we have that line charged, we're going to make a changeover to the hydrant water without ever losing or gaining pressure in the nozzle.